Hey, welcome to this episode of The Upgrade. I'm your host, Peter Bittner. Today we have with us Kevin Friel, a pixel wizard who has really done it all in the video space, particularly in AI. So Kevin has worn many hats in video production, in front of the camera, off camera, behind camera, in edit bay. He recently worked on DUNE 2 as a production coordinator with some of the visual effects department. He has been working on AI productions for films that are going to be at Cannes. So there's a lot to talk about, Kevin. I'm super excited to have you here with us. It's a pleasure. Where are you speaking to me from today?
I'm coming to you from Vancouver, BC, beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, one of the big visual effects hotspots in the world. So great to be here with you, Peter.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you on. So I'm really excited to hear about your journey into video. How did you first get started? What was kind of your formative role in the industry?
Yeah, that was a journey that started a fresh 25 years ago this week, actually. I started out in college doing broadcasting for television. Through that, I got hired in the middle of classes to do camera positions at Senate committee hearings here in Canada. I was born and raised in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. Lots of video work is news and political and corporate oriented. So a lot of news driven stuff. I worked with CTV, a major broadcaster in Canada, Global News, another major broadcaster, and the Canadian political channel, CPAC, our version of C-SPAN for those of the American proclivity. Through that, I did that for about 6 years, worked through a lot of elections, a lot of, major news stories. And I started getting more attention as a freelancer in corporate and commercial work. Before long, I started my own company, which was originally called Symphonic Filmworks. I held that for about 20 years in Ottawa and Toronto. And that got me into major brands such as MBNA, MasterCard, Google, Nike, the Toronto Raptors, and every department of the government of Canada doing anything from instructional videos that were more internal to major campaigns that ended up on broadcast channels. After that, I moved to Vancouver about 8 years ago. And when I moved here, I really opened my eyes to broader and bigger storytelling, being a part of big collaborative groups, as at least at that time, this was a major, major hub for both on-set and visual effects and animation work. So I got myself involved with a smaller visual effects firm, did a bunch of motion graphics for a Mandarin sci-fi feature, which was a co-production between Hong Kong and Hollywood. It was a kind of short-lived spell where Asian markets were looking like a growth opportunity, and there were a lot of co-productions going on to try and bring some of that Hollywood aspect over there. And I got to work on one of those. And that gave me leverage to work at MPC and DNEG and Braun Animation. MPC and DNEG in particular are two of the biggest visual effects firms and most celebrated visual effects firms in the world. At DNEG, that's where I got to work on Doom Part 1. NBC, I got to work on Pokemon Detective Pikachu, Sonic the Hedgehog, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Also worked on Bullet Train at DNEG. And ever since, the ever evolving climate of Hollywood as it is at the moment, I've broken out on my own and gone back a little bit to that sort of a commercial corporate stance, also leveraging a lot of my live event experience as well. Kind of combining the best of, real-time cinema aesthetics and hardware that is, getting more affordable and more accessible by the day with live real-time production. So doing multi-camera cinematic podcasts with 6K Blackmagic cameras and anamorphic lenses have suddenly become accessible to a point and able to be tapped into these workflows where you can cut them like news shows and edit them in real time. And I'm also, of course, getting into the AI space very heavily as well, getting up to speed on the latest and most intricate cinematic AI video production engines, both commercially online on cloud-sourced services that some of you may be familiar with already, and some of those that are more sort of insider driven, and really getting in dirty over the past few months in workflows like Comfy UI, which is a very large, very robust and incredibly intricate and initially very daunting system to create imagery as bespoke and customized as you need to, both in stills and video. It's been a really fantastic journey where, even in traditional workflows, we're always kind of reinventing our viewpoint and our workflows quite a lot. But now in the past year and a half, that is supercharged. It is weekly, if not daily. We are taking a look at some of the problems that we had, some of the more tedious tasks that we had through traditional production workflows, and augmenting them with state-of-the-art, cutting-edge AI assistance, whether that's through sheer sort of like story data management in scripting or editing, or even down to, close to, and there's going to be a time where we're soon going to have very final pixel results that are accessible from the home. And there are firms that are doing final pixel results in certain tasks using modern AI engines. But in terms of like creating a whole scene from scratch from AI, we have a little bit to go there, or you can get it to there using, 80% AI workflows and traditional VFX compositing workflows and 3D workflows, kind of a hodgepodge, and a quasi, pipeline relationship that we've known well enough in traditional video content creation and certainly in large-scale Hollywood VFX workflows. Really taking all of those problem points and taking the best of what we knew and what is on the horizon and what we can work with today to tell stories in much more accessible ways and much more, efficient time flows than we've ever experienced before.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot changing in this space right now. Like, where do you see the intersection of AI and the video industry at large? Like, how is it impacting Hollywood already, or commercial video? You mentioned, for example, that we're not quite at the stage, although we're close maybe, that, people can have real-time rendered via AI versions of their favorite films or series or anime or whatever, just essentially coming out of the ether before their eyes here to, generate their perfect happy ending of perhaps a horror film or whatever, just throwing that out there. But how close are we to that? And, what moment are we in terms of AI and video?
There is so much circulating at the moment. To kind of give you a sense of like the high level portions of it, the firm that I used to work with, DUNE, just acquired an AI visual effects firm that was made recently famous for two pieces. One, the Robert Zemeckis film that features Tom Hanks and the actress's name, who I'm always forgetting. She's a classic one, but it's kind of this high level narrative where, it's kind of like this camera right now. It's fixed in the corner of a room of a house over the lifetime of this family. And, it's the story of this family, like progressing through all of the decades of age in this home. And what was unique about that was this company came up with a bespoke technology that allowed for AI influenced de-aging of the actors in real time on the set, not just for final pixel delivery. So what that did was inform Tom Hanks and his co-star exactly how their bodies should be moving at the different decades of their life. So Tom Hanks in particular had a visual information trained from the entirety of his film and stand-up career inside of these models that were able to, really composite, 20 Hanks onto current 70-something Tom Hanks in real time on an offset monitor. They would do, Tom Hanks would like test his movement on this thing and he would see his face and, the discord between his face and his body that he thinks is like 22-year-old Tom Hanks is like, oh, wait, no, I have to be like straight up and cockier and way more egotistical because that's what I was at 22, and it informed them in real time just by seeing, getting into that reptilian brain of like how they remember themselves at those points, how to even make their posture and movement cadence much more in accordance with the age that they're trying to impress in the frame. So that was a real sort of like watershed turning point of, it's not just AI sort of changing the roles of workflows and, teams and teams of hundreds, sometimes thousands of artists inside of these, very complex shot workflows, but how it actually can contribute and change performance in a traditional film setting. They also worked on Alien Romulus, bringing back the British actor who played the android in the original Alien, essentially back from the dead because the actor passed away a good few years ago. And we're able to, AI model that symbiont back into real, quite good cinema pixel perfect frames. There was a bit of debate about how effective that was, but for, something that was like an entire human generated that way, or parts of them, as we see in the film, he's kind of like cut off at the hip. It was very effective and a very, it added to the story very much so, bringing back that actor and their portrayal, not just visually, but audio as well, doing a voice-to-voice workflow trained on his performance from the first Alien, both on what made it in the film and what was in, the raw bins that didn't quite make it to the film as well. They trained it on that audio too. So we're already seeing pretty large movement in traditional workflows and large visual effects firms seeing the value of this technology and bringing it into really quite traditional workflows, and actually assigning value on it. Like, it was a fair deal that transpired out of this, and leveraging that even further into what I really hope is a mindset of workflow and tool transformation, where we take the best of the artistry that is present in all of the artists that have been there in traditional pipelines and on-set work. And there's more creative addition for each of those artists into what the final pixel looks like. And there's going to be some economic disruption and work disruption for sure, as, the roles of that really cascade out. We're really seeing these kind of,
I'm going to come back to that. I want to set it up with a question. Also,
Okay.
My wife is locked out right here. One sec. This is a priority.
Sounds
Sorry.
good. Oh, good.
We'll be right back. We'll
Yeah.
come back to disruption, though, but those are super cool examples I hadn't heard. So I'll be right back.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Nice.
Wife and baby are inside, so that's always good. Yes.
The eagle has landed.
Yeah, essentially. I didn't even know the eagle took off without the right key. But anyway, there we go.
Wait till they can drive. Yeah.
Oh, man. Can't even imagine. So where were we? So yeah. So with all of these sort of already pretty amazing ways in which AI is able to transform not just the post-production and visual effects, but it seems like the on-set experience for actors and talent. What are some of the economic disruptions that you alluded to earlier? What's really the reshuffling of the deck that's happening with this transformative AI tech?
Well, right now we're definitely seeing a pretty staggering holding pattern on the initiative of work. There's a few sort of large properties that are still coming through the traditional workflows, but with the sort of nexus of the economics realities of, the world and Hollywood, as streaming services are still trying to find a reliable profit engine as well inside of these vastly transformed business models since the pandemic. That's having a knockdown effect on the visual effects service suppliers, and certainly on set crew as well, in just trying to figure out like where the next stories make sense next to invest to. And we're seeing the prognosticators are looking at, well, this is a time where indies rise, and there's going to be sort of more films for lower budgets being commissioned, potentially through the usual suspects. And what that means is a vast efficiency of workflows needs to happen to accommodate the level of storytelling that we're used to, especially through streaming, has really raised the average bar of visual storytelling so much that the audience has such a massive sniff test on what passes as good cinematography or good visual effects or good scripts, good acting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly in the post-production side of things, I can definitely see, and I hope that the business model shows itself towards that, in where a facility like DUNE would be able to take, 10 films and streaming series at once through, a good 1,000 people that are working at any sort of studio facility at one point. That could 10x potentially, using smaller crews per project, really taking the best of these, enhancing workflows, and being able to really iterate through the creative and artistry process to the point where each of those stories become like really remarkable on their own merit. And, we have this kind of rejigged golden age of visual storytelling where these scripts that, may not have quite hit the algorithmic or a sort of producer sensibility sniff test to be like, I don't know about that. We go back to sort of the late 90s and early 2000s sensibilities of like taking a lot more risk on stories that don't have a massive audience, and then like finding an audience as the word of mouth and the sort of like these oblique storylines or ways of telling stories. Now that, Pandora's box has been opened in sort of like the ways that we can tell storytelling. One of the cool artifacts of using AI for visual storytelling, even today, is kind of using that slot machine effect to your benefit and using the hallucinations that it gives you to give you inspiration of like, oh, wow, I never would have come up with like that composition or, these other objects that have appeared that I didn't ask for, but those are really cool. I'm going to take those and run with them, and it feels quasi collaborative at that point. And and there's really brilliant ways that visual storytelling can spark off in directions you never would have imagined just by pinging back. So I do see, my optimistic side says there's a lot to be gained, and there's a lot that could really benefit everybody. And instead of striving so hard just to get past the first threshold of pixel perfect imagery and then iterating it into the, that last 10% being really hard in just nudging it into the narrative scope and the collective creative set, we really get into, okay, so the ballpark is set within like a couple of hours, and now we can just iterate so minutely and in ways that we never could before to get the story the best it can be. But we have to be cognizant of the business climate as well, where that could really turn everything on its side. And, a lot of people do get shut out, and, that storytelling process gets profitized even more than ever. And we have to be very careful of that opportunity and look out for it and see something and say something at the earliest impetuses of that. So it's, with anything AI related right now, the visual storytelling aspect has a lot in contention and a lot that is at stakes right now. So it's wildly interesting times.
Yeah, what you presented there is kind of two possible paths here. One being more rosy, right? We have maybe smaller productions that are suddenly able to come to light, and perhaps more, stories and narratives able to, really filter out into the world, right? The other is, in fact, we go into sort of the opposite direction with this, which is, there's fewer productions, they're done more cheaply, fewer people are hired, period, right? And like,
Yep.
It's really tough to see where things are going to head right now, in terms of the industry, but those feel like, pretty extreme outcomes on either side. And I'm just wondering, like, how are you navigating in sort of your community of colleagues, these disruptions and trying to, upskill, retool, et cetera, and how are you staying on top of all of this stuff as well?
All of those fears are invigorating and daunting all at once. Truly, outside of kind of the more recent developments in like agentic AI engines, visual AI feels to me anyways, probably from a insider perspective, but if I kind of look at it with a broader lens, it feels like the area where just incredible amounts of innovation are happening at ever shortening intervals. So being able to keep up with that is really quite incredible. And the way that I've done it is I've refined it to kind of a two-tier process where I've kept up in shaping, particularly my LinkedIn algorithm, to some of the voices that are really forward on seeing what's out there and trying them out on first pass and telling the yays or nays of each engine that comes out. It's not just the commercial engines, the open source engines, particularly from China, are coming fast and furious now. And Israel is a very large player in that space as well. Getting in and just refining your algorithm to give you the best of the information that is applicable to your field is paramount to me. And that is, there's so many parts of life and work in particular where I refer to that old coding adage, garbage in, garbage out. If you do not participate in your algorithm, you're just going to get the default blanket set and all the horrific stuff that comes with it. But if you tailor it and say, like this, nope, yep, the algorithm starts to really respond for you and attracts all the stuff that you're really wanting to consume. I mean, I've done that across all my social platforms since they've all come out, and I've really finessed that on LinkedIn now.
So you truly mean the algorithms. You're not talking about a metaphor there, because it could be interpreted that way too, right?
Yeah.
We are our own algorithms in the ways that we sort of filter and choose to process our information, but you're saying sort of actually looking through your social feeds themselves and trying to really focus on what you're letting in, how you're staying educated and tuned in, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, those are symbiotically linked. They're not mutually exclusive. It's actually acting physically and then digitally with what your scope of interest is. And and I guess really it's a process of knowing yourself as well. And it's like really checking in with yourself and seeing how you feel about every piece of information and choosing whether to engage with it or not. And then following it up with real action is my meal ticket to not being completely overwhelmed by sometimes the garbage bin that is the internet. So, and then it's being plugged in with real communities. We're lucky to have very engaged AI and visual effects and animation communities here in Vancouver. It's a center for all three. Really staying plugged in with those people and being an active participant as much as projects allow in those communities is really crucial. And online communities as well. I've taken a 12-week visual AI influencers on all things sort of like intricate to get yourself going creatively in AI. And that starts off with as basic as how to run open source large language models locally on your own machine, all the way to here's what every single node inside of Comfy UI particularly does, and this is how it can contribute to your workflows. For me in particular, plugging into that has been like slightly hit or miss because I kind of knew about half of what they were presenting already, but what I have learned in the intricacy of it and the commitment to being in a program like that with people of that caliber has really kept me focused in iterating my own workflows, even in the busiest of times. And I'm able to really stay ahead and on top of, what is really just being presented and bombarded to us at such short intervals.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're actively continuing to learn and expand your skill sets and figure out what workflows work best for you. Tell me about, what excites you most about the 2-week course we have here together at the Upgrade, and what can students expect to enroll in terms of a journey over those 4 sessions diving into AI video?
What I'm really excited about for students taking this is, really the 50-cent tour of what I hoped I got in 25 years of story creation and really evolving into this AI ecosphere. It's a hybrid approach of really knowing what your storytelling resources, your influences, your language is. So we really get into what are your visual influences on, either a commercial or a short film that you want to tell, getting that mood board together so that you're perfectly aligned to know exactly what it is that you visually want to represent, on top of just your story and your character and dialogue turning points if you happen to have dialogue in it. The language of cinema is just so part of the frame is wildly important, right? You see these guitars in the background here and you're like, guess he plays guitar, and the lighting.
Do you time out?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Had to ask. Originally was a journalist, just need to fact check.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
Yeah.
I think not.
I'm not that record collector who doesn't own a record player. So yeah. Yeah. I dive in. I've been playing these longer than I've been doing visual art forms actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, taking those parts that your humanity, your burning passion of what you want to tell through the visual medium, getting all of those emotional pieces together and then using the AI workflow in a fairly intricate as possible in that time frame, because you can go way deep, but we'll get you into something that gets you your first piece way beyond that you would have had just trying to cobble together YouTube, tutorials across, it's really like 4 to 6 different platforms that you're going to be using to bring something together right now. It's sort of what's old is new again in terms of workflows is very much here for AI. And you can shorten that somewhat if you align yourself towards, one platform that does a lot of different parts. And there's varying degrees of capability in each of those parts inside of that platform. But to get the best out of it, it's really, electronically duct taping together several different tools to get you your final result is going to give you beyond the best of what you could do just entirely on your own. And what I love about this format with you folks is that it's truly collaborative in real time over those 2 weeks and 4 sessions. I get to learn so much from different storytellers each time that I go through. Whether I'm taking a learning session or if I'm teaching these tools and processes, it's like there's little nuggets like, oh, that's really cool. Can I take that as well and like add it to my arsenal? So it is a very sort of like reciprocal approach to just really exploring these new frontiers of visual storytelling and the really cool emotional journey of like, wow, I put that together with the hand of a really talented robot. This is insane, Yeah,
absolutely. That's really awesome. I think that there's going to be, at the end of these 4 sessions, right, actual product. We're aiming for 90 seconds or so of polished final video. And this whole production process, as you alluded to already, right, is AI driven. So thinking about how do you retool, not just, the sort of After Effects part of it or whatever, right, as AI, but let's reimagine what's possible in every stage of the workflow, from even, pre-production to narrative design to character design, right? Thinking about, what are the things we have at our fingertips now that just didn't exist like even a year ago, right? And
or heck, a month ago
or a week ago.
Yeah, honestly, like this is the interval of change that we're presented with right now. It as I said, it's equally exciting and daunting. Yeah.
What are some of your preferred stack for this? I think it'd be probably a benefit to whoever's watching right now. Thanks for sticking with us here and, telling them about how you're best using these tools and what they can expect the course will cover.
Yeah, right now we're at this sort of precipice where there's several tools that in one way do very unique things and also do certain things very well that the other one can't, which is kind of true of any tool set, but it's really sort of like exemplifying the real difference right now. So in terms of, my basic sort of structure of what I like to use if I'm not doing something like really bespoke and custom inside of Comfy UI, I love generating images inside of Midjourney using a prompt template that I found really gets me what I want, that I've turned into a custom GPT to help me, create those prompts instead of me manually bashing out those prompts all the time. And then taking that into one of 2 visual generators, depending on the flavor that I'm looking for, either Runway Gen-3 Alpha and Gen-3 Alpha Turbo, or Kling, which is a Chinese visual AI engine that's doing really great things. If I had access to it, I would probably be using Google VO too a lot more, because a lot of the examples that are coming out for that are really, really gorgeous. But it's just cost prohibitive in the amount of compute that it uses right now to get sort of basic shots out. Whereas I can, sign up for an unlimited account through Runway, for example, and just get hundreds of shots if I need to out per month for a relatively affordable cost point. And then if I have dialogue involved, I'll use Runway's Act 1 engine, which is literally like taking a shot very much like this, but with a much cleaner and plain background and flat lighting, and looking towards camera directly and doing those facial performances that can then be transferred onto, even just pre-existing shot footage that you run through Runway or generated footage that you have through any other video generation engine or Runway as well. And it tracks perfectly on a moving character and it gives you that cohesive, like full body and facial performance. And you just start to get all of that sort of like nuanced micro emotion and micro movements that, really tells us whether we're in the uncanny valley or not. If we look at the way that the first sort of Final Fantasy 3D feature film came out, so I think it was 20 years ago now, versus, the modern Pixar films and the fidelity of the micro movements inside of the face gestures now, or even, a PS5 game, a lot of those, the emotional fidelity that comes out of facial performances really locks you in your empathy to see and believe what that digital character is feeling, whether that's a photoreal or more sort of like Pixar representation. So it's all kind of like, it's a workflow of getting towards, even if it's a fantastical world and sort of like character look, getting as much human presence to get that emotional buy-in as innately as possible.
I can't wait to, join in this adventure as well. My background as co-instructor and advisor here, as well as Chris's, is in journalistic, storytelling visually. I used to teach a class at UC Berkeley's Graduate School of Journalism called The Future of Visual Storytelling for years, actually. And so
Amazing.
I'm really excited to partner with Kevin on this. I'm really excited to really, pick your brain as someone who's been in this space like daily during this transition, right? Kevin is definitely deep down all these rabbit holes. He's who you want to learn from, there's no doubt. And, I'm hopeful that some of my perspective and Chris's, as we've taught now hundreds of creatives who've come from all different types of visual and non-visual fields, right, and professions, can help add a bit of, structure, rigor, perspective, maybe occasionally comedic relief in certain cases, hopefully. But, we also aim to help make sure that you do your best, in terms of just having a smooth student experience. That's a lot of what we really are shooting for and holding at the highest standard. But, in that regard, it sounds like, there's a number of software and sort of subscriptions or at least free trials that people will want to, probably pilot during the course. We'll send out kind of a list of those beforehand and some recommendations, but off the top of your head, what would some of those likely be? Is there sort of an expected budget? Again, I'm putting you on the spot here. We'll send this out, but what's your sense?
Yeah, it's, as we get closer to the date, the field is going to change quite a bit. So we're going to try and keep this as up to the minute as possible. So this may, invariably flux. This is a few weeks before we're going to be presenting the program. So, today I'd say definitely have a play around with Runway. There are several excellent features under the hood of Runway that, they have their own image generation engine called Frames, which is really quite nice. It certainly does far better than the first versions of DALL-E or, Midjourney version 3 to 5. Absolutely. And even some of the early versions of Midjourney 6. And in terms of sort of like cinematic looks and some like kind of semi-Pixar looks that it's got really fine-tuned training for. It's really, really, really nice. I've gotten some spectacular frames out of it. And then you can take that into its video engine to add movement to it. It's got camera controls in it, so you can really direct and sculpt inside of that. And then you've got Act 1 to add any kind of facial character performance to it too. So I'd say, if you're really wanting to test the waters leading up to this, there is a bit of a free trial to it, but you burn through the free credits very quickly. Even just spending like $20 odd, I think the first paid platform is right now, will get you enough of a sense of like what's your, what your expectations can be in just like early image generation and then video generation and doing a character performance through it and getting a handful of shots through it just to see what it's capable of. I think that's kind of the one that's really great to have a comprehensive go through with. Absolutely.
Before I let you go, tell me a little bit about some of the projects you're working on these days with your, relatively new, and I'm sure daily updating workflows for a video.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm currently working on somewhere between a 5 to 10 minute fully generated kind of narrative commercial for an educational technology company that's going to be debuting somewhere inside of Cannes. I think it's like an educational technology festival inside of the broader Cannes film festival and technology festival. So I have about 2 weeks to bring all that together. And there's some novel ways of storytelling that I'm going to be utilizing quite a bit. Namely, I'm really going to put Runway's brand new first style frame feature that just came out over the past couple of days to its paces. And what that allows you to do is, Runway already had a very robust video to video feature. And my first short film, which, I'm sure will accompany this podcast, and certainly as we go through the course should you decide to join, was literally me taking my iPhone and putting it on motorized sliders and a little bit of lighting and filming myself acting out this kind of like Black Mirror sort of scenario of like a spiritual technological intervention, and using Runway to prompt that video with this exact framing that I have and the exact sort of facial movements that I have into, a London apartment that has way more production value than just what, my small house has to offer, and give it a lot more of that cinematic aesthetic, nudge the light into the right direction, and just elevate the sort of like presence of the storytelling in way further ways. What that first frame stylized feature does is you take that first frame of something that you shot or something that you generated somewhere else and may just want to like finesse into something, a bit more concrete. And you take that and you could take that into a image, AI manipulator such as Magnific, which is kind of more famous for doing like putting an input image, like say from Midjourney, and upscaling it to like 4 8K and adding a lot of very sort of photographic detail into like clothing and backgrounds and pores and facial features to just have you believe that it's a real shot instead of something that's a little bit more plasticky that came out of the early image generators. What Magnific allows you to do now is to take a photo, so say your first frame from your video, and transmute that into the exact world that you want it to with a lot more control and finesse than a straight video to video workflow. You can then take that frame back into Runway's first frame stylizer, and it will just wildly and accurately transform your whole video into the exact style that you have input into that first frame. And that, I've seen a lot of sort of new ways of treating visual effects with that too, by like, say, adding a like a digital parrot on someone's shoulder as the first frame and telling Runway to be like, okay, animate the parrot like in the style of, the fellow from Aladdin, and it nails it. Like, you could have the person turning around and walking and the camera can be like a 360, gimbal shot.
They're underwater, scuba diving, and the parrot's still there.
Yeah, exactly.
Bubbles going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's, it's amazing. And Pika Labs has, kind of similar things as well, but the Runway methodology just lets you do like exactly as you want and it plays it out. So that's something I'm going to be using quite a lot because the script that I'm doing features a lot of humor in it, and that needs a lot of human nuance to like really sell that humor. It's a really hard emotional piece to be able to portray in strict prompting or strict generation. So I'm excited to run that through its paces and just see how much of a humoristic sell that we can do with all these technologies.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it turns out. What's the biggest thing that you're excited about in terms of what might be possible with AI in video that isn't today, right?
Yeah. It's really the democratization of liberating these stories that just never had access to budgets or industry connections to be able to be told in the ways that they deserve. And there's so many traps inside of Western, business-driven storytelling that, we have 100,000 versions of the hero's journey, basically the Lord of the Rings sort of scope of, a character comes from a small sort of like a benign kind of nowhere existence and has to rise to a hero persona to do this impossible thing in an impossible scenario. We've got a lot of that, and there's still some really exciting turns in that, but I think there's a real hunger for wildly different ways to tell stories outside of like these, 5 to 10 sort of different kinds of stories that have been commercially acceptable for so long. And what AI really gives us the opportunity to explore and really broadcast is new voices, new ways to tell stories in ways that those of us that are in those established rabbit holes never imagined trying. And I think there's a really exciting new fertile ground still to be had inside of the linear narrative storytelling, never mind before we get into like the more experiential stuff and experience-based storytelling that is, started to come across in gaming, but is really going to start to blow wide open as we get into these sort of like real-time AI-built worlds that you can move and interact with that we're starting to see. But even inside of like linear narrative storytelling, I think there's huge potential to just find wildly new ways of telling different kinds of stories that we've just never seen before, at price points that are a whole lot less riskier than giving James Cameron $2 billion to make the next Avatar. Those are great, but let's get some different voices in the pot. And I can't wait to, potentially find storytellers that take this program and give you those tools and just see what you do with it, because we need those voices now more than ever.
Well said. Well said. Well, that's a fantastic note to end on, Kevin. I really appreciate your time today. I'm super excited for the course. Where can people find you?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so excited to be contributing to your platform and to collaborate and jam with you guys. I really love what you're doing. The conscientiousness of making sure that the student experience is top notch through all of this is so important. Let's face it, safety is such a huge part of learning, and you guys really exemplify that and bring that forward in all of your offerings. And that's what I'm all about too. So it's coming home for me in a lot of ways. In terms of discovering more about me, you can check me out on my website, kevinfriel.com, and all of my socials are Mr. Pixel Wizard. So you can find me dominantly on LinkedIn, a little bit on Instagram, somewhat on YouTube. I need to do better about that, but certainly LinkedIn is my stomping grounds to see what I'm up to at any moment.
Awesome. Well, you can find Kevin on our YouTube channel if you're watching him right now here. Thanks for joining. Please like, subscribe, all of that jazz, and details for the course also are below in the description there. If you're listening to this, thank you so much for tuning in wherever that is, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Please also, be sure to subscribe, give us a review. We'd really appreciate a 5-star review if you're enjoying, hearing from Kevin and other field leaders at the frontier of AI and their industries. We're really excited to, continue to build things together with others. If you have an idea for a course, a training, a workshop, community event, let us know. Thanks for joining us today, though, and listening. And Kevin, really appreciate your time. I'll see you in class, buddy.
Sounds good, Peter. Really appreciate it. I'm so stoked for this. And I'm stoked to join all of you and push these story building foundations way further than we all imagined. Here we go.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely.